The teacher education program at the college prepares our students to be very successful in the educational spaces they will find themselves in the Pacific Northwest or in the world specifically. Um, and we have flexible offerings, either night or day offerings for students. And we also work with the traditional student or those who are non-traditional and need their education provided to them in a variety of different ways. As the state is growing in population and changes, we realize that probably close to 50% of the students in the state of Washington are students of diverse backgrounds. Some of that issue finds its way into school simply because the number of teachers that we've recorded are around that are of diverse backgrounds are around 11%. So we know that students will thrive when they can see and interact and relate with educators who look like them, talk, about things like them, have the same language. We know that they do better in school. So part of our work has been to see what we can do to improve the diversity within the educational teaching force within Washington. We have the Diversify the Educator Workforce Initiative. And we have three wonderful guests here with us today who are going to talk more about that and the impact that we're making. Dr. Stacy Harden is the Assistant Dean of Teacher Education Programs at the U. Dr. Teddy Beam Conroy is the Associate Teaching Professor of Elementary Education. And Dr. Patina Shea is the Endowed Professor of Teacher Education and the 2025 Distinguished Researcher Award by the Research on the Education of Asian and Pacific Americans. So we welcome you to our group, and we're waiting to hear more about diversifying the workforce, the teacher workforce in Washington.
Thank you all so much for allowing us to this opportunity to speak about this initiative, diversifying the educator workforce. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much. At the heart of all of us, Dr. Beam Conroy, Dr. Shea, and myself, we were all teachers for a really long time. We were lifelong learners and now lifelong teachers. So we wanted to start off today with a very quick activity. And we wanted to see what your knowledge was regarding do. So I am dropping a Padlet into the chat. And if you could go ahead and either click that link, or we also have a QR code here. That Padlet is going to ask you, there should be actually 4 columns there, but if you could just answer those first 2, what are some things that you know or think you may know about the DO initiative? And then what do you hope you'll learn from today's presentation? And I'm going to put 2 minutes on our timer, and then we are going to go ahead through that. I'm so excited to get answers. All right. Indeed, that was our timer. True teacher over here. So just as we go through that, actually, let me share that again. Thank you all so much for indulging us in that. We hope to look at what you want to know about do and try to incorporate that into this presentation. This type of strategy or activity is just one activity that we give our students to activate prior knowledge. We want to understand what it is that students already know. And so we teach our students an activity like this, we model it for them, and then they can go into their classrooms and also use this to activate that prior knowledge so that they know where to meet their students at. So again, thank you. So just to get into Do is a heart project that we absolutely love to talk about. And I'm going to try to give you the history of Do. And I'm going to get back over to the presentation. There we go. All right, I'm going to give you a presentation, and these are Dr. Beam Conroy's babies you see on the screen here. So these were some students, some of our alum now from LTEP. So after seeing the clash in demographics in our partner schools, after receiving data from the Roadmap project, which I will put that link also in the chat, and there it is right there. The Roadmap project, it does collect data on demographics and education outcomes within the Puget Sound Educational Service District, which is the district or the group of districts that we serve here at the UW. So after getting that data, after learning about the clash in the demographics in our partner schools, and also delving deep into the research on the advantages of teacher diversity for our students, for all students, the TEP leadership at that time began devising a plan to produce more diverse teachers. Around 2018, when TEP leadership noticed this issue, our 5 pathways were only producing about 30% of racially diverse teachers across all 5 of our pathways. So we have 5 pathways, and that statistic is across all 5. While K-12 schools in PSESD served 72% of racially diverse K-12 students. So we saw there was a huge gap in who was teaching our students and what our students looked like and what their background was. TEP leadership did understand that, we were not preparing teachers that share the same demographics as the students we served. Thus, the push to diversify the Educator Workforce Initiative was born. During the generative dreaming sessions in 2018 and 2019, TEP leadership identified several tasks, events, key personnel, and much more that would help us to diversify the educator workforce. Just to show you a bit of insight inside our process, here is our theory of action. This was used as our entry point into this work. We understood if we initially focused on recruitment and retention of BIPOC individuals, these teacher candidates would graduate our program and gain employment within PSESD and teach students that looked like them or had the same background as them. Also, when we thought about retention, not only retaining students within our pathways, but we also thought about retention in the profession. So keeping teachers in the classroom by providing support after they left their teacher preparation programs. Now, as easy as that may sound, there was a lot of thinking and planning for this because many people of color do not see themselves at the University of Washington. We also did not have established relationships with many of the diverse communities that are present in the K-12 classroom, and they were also not present in our program. So we had to do a lot of work around partnering with some of the diverse communities in this area. To begin to address this, we developed this theory of action, and we looked at what we currently have access to, which at the university at large, we have a lot of undergrad programs that we would be able to recruit from. Specifically our undergraduate programs, of course. We also looked a little closer to home within the College of Education. We have our robust undergraduate programs that we were able to start to recruit from and to understand that demographic and to understand how we could help them transition into one of our TEP programs. And then we knew we also began thinking through relationships we had within our community organizations, which you see that kind of at the bottom there, and how we could leverage those relationships to increase our recruitment efforts. Since our initial launch in 2020, we have worked very, very hard to increase the number of diverse students we have prepared. There are many other aspects to diversifying the educator workforce that we have engaged in to ensure our students get what they need while they are with us and beyond. So, this is a good part. To date, we have provided over $1.3 million in scholarships to over 90 Black, Indigenous, and other teacher candidates whose identities are underrepresented in the local teaching workforce. Our awards do range from $500 up to $20,000. Unfortunately, in 2020, last year, 2024, we did have to decrease the maximum amount of the award from $20,000 to about half the cost of the teacher candidates program. Instead of that $20,000 award, it was about $16,000 at the highest, which is why we're continuing to push for additional monies to come in, because the cost of tuition is one of the biggest issues, the biggest barriers of students of color not coming into the University of Washington and becoming a teacher. We've also hired some amazing support staff that Dr. Shea talked about a little bit ago. They were able to make a lot of what initially happened, or what we really wanted initially in our dreaming sessions, a reality. We have a recruitment specialist and a retention specialist. Our recruitment specialist, Elizabeth Kelly, and our retention specialist, Gwen Sweeney. Elizabeth has built partnerships with communities that are currently not in our programs and ameliorated our application process for prospective students. Gwen has done an amazing job with understanding the needs of our teacher candidates and providing necessary resources to help them get through temporary emergencies, whether this is financial or otherwise. She has been an amazing advocate and guide for our students. And then the last bullet point that you see under ongoing is our post-program induction and professional development. Our post-program induction and PD is we have a program called Edu Design, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because I could talk about that program all day. But what I will say is it is a unique professional development program that features a by us, for us type of professional development. Participants explain what they need, and facilitators are able to build professional development around their needs. Under the process section that we have here, we are currently formalizing a few key community partnerships. This process of formalizing partnerships will always be on our to-do list. As we find community organizations that align with our DO initiative, we will always work to build true partnerships with those relevant organizations. Pathway revisions is something we're working on. We're looking at each of our 5 pathways to ensure they are all accessible and are geared toward the diverse student. This might mean that classes are our classes available to all students when they are available to take classes? Or do we have evening classes in all of our pathways? We're also constantly looking at the cost of attendance. How many quarters are our programs? Is there a way to reduce that to a lesser amount? The Regional Grow Your Own program, we do partner with Seattle Public Schools on their ARE program, but we're also thinking about what can we do with the other districts within the PSCSD. So the Regional Grow Your Own program is in its preliminary stages. For this, we are looking at speaking with students while they are in high school. Those students who might want to become teachers, start to provide them with some programming so that we can start to engage them a little bit more in the teaching profession. We feel like if we engage them in classes or activities while they are in high school, and then support them as they go through community college or undergrad, and then come to us for their teacher certification and their master's, we will be able to provide them with a through line of support throughout their educational career. The multilingual program expansion is something we've been working on for years, or we've had it for years, and now we are looking at expanding it. As we continue to think about diversifying the educator workforce, we are expanding to think in depth about linguistic diversity. Our state superintendent Superintendent Chris Reichdell has stated that by 2030, students should have access to dual language education. Prior to this announcement, we had already started to offer multilingual education. However, now, with the support of the state, we hope to expand our offerings and to produce more linguistically diverse teachers to support the state goal, and more importantly, our students within our state. The practice-based doctorate in teacher education, we're super excited about that as well. That's our next bullet point on the screen. You're going to hear a lot more about that as well, so I won't go into detail, but we're excited to offer our teachers an EDD program that allows them to continue their education and offers critical professional development while they're with us. Program evaluation is the final bullet point. Program evaluation is a continuous process. Starting in the fall, we plan to redesign our evaluation methods and tools to better capture our due goals. This will allow us to provide additional information on the effectiveness of the extremely important work. But to give you a better idea of how this looks in practice, I want to hand it over to Dr. Beam Conroy for her to provide us with more information about one of our 5 pathways.
Thank you, Dr. Harden. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about LTAP, an Elementary Teacher Education Program. That's a program that I direct, and how DO has affected our program in particular. And I wanted to give a little bit of a trajectory about that information, that statistical information about where we were in terms of producing, preparing teachers who look like and sound like our students longitudinally to where we are today. So going back, you can see on the graph here, the percentage of teachers of color, BIPOC students, has significantly increased since our attention to that, starting in about 2017. Of course, the DO scholarships really made a major difference in that. And then the percentage of multilingual teacher candidates, again, folks that sound like our students, not only in terms of understanding the communities they come from, but also speaking their languages. And that also goes to the bilingual placements, has also increased. So we've done quite a bit of expansion. The first picture I want to call your attention to is from our very first year of our evening cohort. We, of course, have understood that we have a number of paraeducators in our districts who didn't have access before we made this expansion to get their teacher certificates in our existing programs. So we've expanded that program, and we now have a strand of paraeducators who are attending in the evening, as well as our daytime folks. So what you see here is some of our students that have been recipients of the generosity of those DO scholarships. It's not only recruiting and funding students that's part of making sure that we are actually preparing students. I recently came across, in doing some writing about this, the idea of critical humanizing pedagogies. And that is basically what we have been doing in LTEP and probably in our other pathways, but I can speak more to my own, in terms of welcoming students in, because it's one thing to say, we want you here, we see you here, but it's also another to say, these 3 aspects, being yourself in this program. We want you as you are. We want you to come into our program. We want to emulate and to model what we want folks to do when they're out in the field. Something I've said in my years of education, we talk about school readiness, and I've always wondered why schools don't get ready for kids. And so we want to model that here in our teacher preparation programs, that we are ready for the students that come to us to get their certification. So regardless of, we want to make a welcoming environment for them to be themselves, their full linguistic repertoire. We have multilingual pedagogies where our students are welcome to use the language of their choice in turning in their work, in having small group discussions with students in their coursework, again, that's not only affirming who they are, but also modeling the kinds of pedagogies that we want them to take into the field so that they can be welcoming of the students in our communities. We want our students to have a sense of belonging. So in that second photograph you see there, again, that's our evening program, where you see some folks are joining online and some folks are actually physically in the room. That's a hybrid by design program where folks can participate as paraeducators from remote areas as well as folks who are here closer to us in the Seattle area. So there's that ability to inculcate that sense of you are part of a group, we are on this journey together. One of the things that we say in LTEP is you can't teach your students unless you know your students. And so we're not teaching to a nameless, faceless, languageless, raceless majority, because we know that what is really the norm in our schools in the Seattle area is diversity. And so we teach for that diversity for our own students as well as for their students as they are along their pathway to becoming. So what you see there in that last photograph is one of our students who is one of the paraeducators from Seattle Public Schools, teaching a lesson to a group of summer school students. So supporting our folks as they become educators and moving into them developing that teacher identity. We pay a lot of attention to identities. Having Gwen, our recruitment specialist, with us has been tremendously helpful with that, because what they need is that support. What we understand is that when you diversify a university, bringing in all the oppressions and barriers and roadblocks that folks face on the outside, those things come into the institution with them. And so it's not enough for us to just do the normal, the day-to-day that we have done before and pretend that these are the same kinds of students that we've had before. They have the same potentials, they have the same trajectories, but they also bring in those roadblocks that have prevented them from coming to us in the first place. So helping people become teachers by eliminating those barriers is something that's been very instrumental for the Do work.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Bean Conroy. So I get to tell you about kind of some places that we're heading and how do we continue the work of diversifying the educator workforce after candidates leave our programs and they become teachers. So first of all, I just want to say it's really lovely to be with you all again. Those of you who were at the fall ambassador meeting, I was also there and I got to introduce myself. So it's lovely to be with you, even though virtually this time. And I'm excited to present this part because one of the things that is core to who I am as a teacher educator and to our teacher education programs is that we believe that teacher education isn't done after pre-service teacher education. And Dr. Hardin mentioned earlier that we have an induction support program that we call EduDesign. It's a group of teacher leader and learning communities. And so we'd like to play this short video for you that in their own words, teachers and the staff who are involved in the program themselves can tell you a little bit more about what EduDesign is and how EduDesign helps us to retain diverse teachers and support a sense of belonging as they transition into the field.
EduDesign Fellowships are year-round, teacher-led, and justice-focused professional learning communities. Participants are alumni of the College of Education, their colleagues, and other teachers in the region. Each cohort is led by a team of teacher leaders who co-plan and co-facilitate each of the sessions with support from the college's staff, community connections, access to research and scholarship, and other resources. EduDesign represents a collective approach to learning, driven by the inquiry and experiences of the teacher participants themselves.
Teacher retention is a major concern in our country, and we know that for teachers to stay in the field, They need to feel like the work that they are doing is meaningful. They need to feel like they have a community of other educators to grow their practice with. And they need to feel welcome in the places where they're working. And it's important that we create spaces where they can find that community, where they can find those spaces for like meaningful learning.
So EduDesign helps me to be prepared to make a difference in the field just by taking a lot of buzzwords that we hear in the school district and during district PDs and help us have conversations with one another in order to impact our daily practice and to really be reflective on the current research and things that will actually change teaching for the future. And it just helps me to do some deeper learning personally, and with a group of like-minded educators. That's been really helpful over the last couple of years.
A lot of the ideas in EduDesign are really practical, and they, despite we're really theoretical, we're thinking about really big ideas, but then people, because everyone's like a classroom teacher, also sharing actual things that you do. And I feel like I've often gone to colleagues and shared what I've learned. I've often, thought, oh my gosh, that's an amazing idea. I'm going to implement that in my classroom, this year or next year. And I feel like there's a actual pipeline of oh, somebody has done this. This person kind of shares the same core beliefs about teaching and education that I do, and they've found this to be a thing that works.
I think my experience with the EduDesign program has prepared me by connecting me with a lot of like-minded colleagues and collaborators. It's let me learn from their own ideas as well. We're kind of working together to sort through problems. No one's kind of coming in as an expert. There's no kind of hierarchy, and so we really are learning together as a group, as a community, and kind of getting back to the community idea of schooling. And I think that's it's a mindset, it's kind of a culture that I can then bring into my own work with my kids.
It's important to me as an educator to participate in opportunities like EduDesign because it's the only training that I get to choose. I get to opt in to content I want to learn and that people that I want to learn with, and I don't have that option during the rest of the school year. So I come to it fresher and I get more out of it because I have some agency in my involvement.
I can't tell you how many teachers just say oh, I've just been craving this since I left my graduate program. There aren't places for me to really engage in honest ways about big ideas. A lot of professional learning is really kind of following a model of sort of, we have these ideas that we think you need to take on. Here are some tools to do it. Now you go and bring this into your classroom on your own. And we know that kind of PD isn't really successful. It doesn't really impact people's practice. You need people to continue to think and learn with. You need spaces to grapple with those ideas. You need to try things on with your kiddos and then come back and talk about what happened with your colleagues, or sometimes even try things on together. So really kind of building those new models for how we can support one another, how we can have that kind of community, how we can do that kind of new professional learning is what makes a difference. And that's how the work of EduDesign and the work of the college in general is really focused on building those kinds of communities. And that's, I think, what makes a difference.
Thank you so much for watching that video with us. Just to kind of elaborate on some of the points that were brought up in the video, our colleague Deborah Masachi, who has been directing the EduDesign programs for, I think since their inception, for many, many years, you can see her deep passion and commitment to building communities that foster belonging and teacher agency, and also that develop teacher expertise. And it's been a real privilege to come alongside the EduDesign programs and see what a unique space it is, or they are. Oh, I'm sorry, to promote. Can you all hear me okay? Speaking up is usually not an issue for me, but I will, and I'll speak closer to the mic. But So the EduDesign cohorts are really wonderful professional learning spaces where we do create a cohesive sense of belonging, particularly for many of our former teacher candidates who have then entered the field of teaching from our programs. The program is open to other teachers who are justice-minded, who don't come from our programs, but we find this as a particular source of support that extends out the work that happens in our program. So one of the things that folks wanted to know about DO is the types of support that teacher candidates get once they enter the workforce. And that is one part of the support. Another question from things that people wanted to know was that the forms of diversity that we're looking at. And certainly in EduDesign, one of the things that has been really impactful is, although there are cohorts both focused specifically on Black, Indigenous, and other people of color identifying teachers, there's also cohorts that are general cohorts for any justice-minded educator, including BIPOC teachers who feel more comfortable in spaces that are not necessarily a BIPOC affinity space. And also in the last 2 years, we've focused on intersectional issues related to disability and inclusion, with an inclusion cohort last year and this year with infusing principles of disability justice across both of the EduDesign cohorts that are existing. We've also played with some different models around kind of new teacher focus groups, new teacher and more experienced groups, so that we're really creating this pathway for teachers towards leadership. And that leads us to the other thing that Dr. Hardin mentioned earlier. This is my passion project, and we are currently in progress, moving forward and thinking about our future in building diverse teacher leaders. So as we think about the educator workforce, we are thinking about teachers, but we're also thinking about teacher educators. And how can we as teacher educators bring more folks into teacher education who are working both in pre-service and in district and other in-service induction contexts, curriculum development contexts, to be thinking about the work of teacher education specifically. And so my last kind of few minutes are going to be talking about the EDD, which we're transitioning from a traditional, a traditional model to a practice-based doctorate that focuses on a mix of practice. So theory-informed and research-informed practice, specifically related to teacher education and teacher learning for justice. And so some of the components that we think about, or I've been thinking about as I've been working in collaboration to design this program, is how we actually have people who are interested in doing teacher leading both in and outside of the classroom engage with coursework, continued coursework at the university, engaging in community partnerships. So being teacher leaders both in their school sites, sometimes in their own classrooms, or alongside other more junior teachers, or in programs like EduDesign or in our teacher education programs. How do we build professional community? One of the things that I think a couple of the teachers mentioned in the EduDesign video is how important community was as opposed to hierarchy, a place where students can come together to talk about what it means to do teacher education work in the field to support retaining diverse educators and all educators, actually. We're thinking about integrating coaching within our teacher education programs. Traditionally, we have built a very strong collaboration between our teacher education programs, our candidates, and our doctoral students in teaching, learning, and curriculum, and we want to continue that model with this EDD. We also want to think about teaching and action-based practice-grounded research, so research that is really impacting the work that is done in schools and teacher education, and how we think about community-based design work. So coming alongside the real things that are happening in schools and communities and in teacher education programs. And we really hope that the work that we're doing in DO will help foster our community relationships so that also our eventual doctorates with this EDD in teacher education and teacher learning for justice are major contributors regionally and nationally to the work of teacher education in districts and in universities. So now we're going to come back to the Padlet. So as teachers do, right? We want to not leave you hanging. And so Stacey, do you mind dropping the Padlet code one more time?
Absolutely.
So Stacey is Dr. Harden is going to drop in the Padlet code one more time into the chat for you, but we'd love for you to come back to the Padlet and fill out some comments on the right-hand side of the Padlet, those right-hand 2 columns. What did you learn about DO, the Diversifying the Educator Workforce Initiative, and what feels compelling to you? And then what questions do you still have? What questions remain? And again, the QR code is there for you if you prefer to scan. See, Dr. Harden just dropped the link back into the chat. I see you coming back on to the Padlet as we speak. And for those of you looking to find out how you can support, stay tuned. I know we didn't address that, but our good friend Jessica Neruzzi is going to address that shortly. So I know you may still have that question, but I promise it's coming. We're going to set another 2-minute timer. We're going to set another 2-minute timer, and then we'll come back and open up for people who want to unmute and ask questions. We have that question.
Yeah.
We're working really hard.
Well, we are grateful that we have a supportive dean and supportive administrative team to allow us to fight and to continue this work for our students and their future students. And so we're excited to continue as we have been and continue doing what we have been doing and push the envelope a little more. I know she may not want to hear that part, but just just continue to talk about what is going on and what does that mean for the populations that we serve. And so we do plan to keep doing exactly what we have been doing.
Yeah. The question about Latino students, absolutely. I did not disaggregate that data about how many multilingual students we have and how many are placed in bilingual classrooms, but certainly our largest group of multilingual, future bilingual educators are those who speak Spanish, particularly Latina students who speak Spanish. And a glance at our upcoming cohort, looks like we're going to keep with those numbers. So, and the great thing about it is that we always, whoops.
That was the timer.
I know we stopped before 2 minutes. I just realized that. And you're right to say that there are lots of Latino students in our schools. Those students are always in demand on graduation. One of our success stories is we had 3 students offered contracts last week, and they have not yet graduated. But yeah, they're ready to go out and serve.
And I also really appreciate, we can go back to the slideshow if people want, and we can also open up for questions, but I really appreciate, I actually teach in Teddy's program this quarter. I'm teaching a methods class for her students. And I just appreciate there's a real diversity of multilingual folks and multilingual placements as well. And there is a large percentage of Spanish speakers and multilingual Spanish speakers, but also a sizable representation of Mandarin speakers, Korean speakers, Japanese speakers, in order to meet kind of those rising demands in districts as well.
Absolutely.
So this is our contact information. We want to thank you so much for your time and attention. And then we'd love to open it up for questions.
Can you talk a little bit more about coaching? Because I think when we were trying to retain teachers in my school district, one of the things that we introduced was coaching, and we actually released some teachers who are outstanding in their field to actually work with teachers every day in the classroom. So talk a little bit more about what you're doing in the coaching area.
Yeah, so there's 2 different types of, we use the word coaching in kind of 2 different ways when we talk about coaches here. So we talk about coaches for our pre-service candidates. Teddy, do you want to, or Dr. Bean Conroy, do you want to start with that? And then I'll talk about coaching, which I think you're referring to, Shrell, about coaching in-service teachers in the field. So Dr. Bean Conroy?
Yeah, so what has typically been in the past with student teaching is a supervision model where someone goes in to evaluate how the student is doing, and that's part of the role of our coaches, but we really take that word coach seriously. Our students are in the field with students from within the first quarter of their time with us, and so they spend a lot of time in classrooms alongside of our teacher candidates. And at that point, it becomes, again, looking at each candidate to see what they need to progress. It is an evaluative role, but it's also a supportive role. Each coach has anywhere from 6 to 8 to 9, 10 folks that they are visiting, have touch points with, develop relationships with the mentor teachers. For our multilingual folk, I will say our coaches are all former teachers, so they have that classroom experience. And for our multilingual folk, they also have experience teaching in bilingual settings. So, and they speak the languages of the students that they are coaching. So all of our Spanish-speaking students who are in Spanish-speaking dual language placements have folks that have coaches who have done those jobs as classroom teachers before. Same with Vietnamese, same with Korean, Mandarin, etc. So we think that's very important that they get a real close idea of what is actually expected of them as classroom teachers from folks who've already done that work.
And then in terms of teacher coaching, which I think may have gotten to the heart of your question, Cheryl. So we actually do, so we have 3 kind of transformation of the program EDD doctoral students right now who are doing a previous iteration of the program, and all 3 of them are actually teacher coaches. So they're teachers on special assignment where part of their workday is actually spent coaching new teachers as well. And part or all of their workday, they're either full release teachers or they're half classroom teachers and half doing teacher coaching. And it's actually been really wonderful because in their first quarter, they took classes alongside our PhD graduate students around teacher education practices, but then they met as a small cohort. And we hope to keep that model kind of going. And then they've also met as a small cohort this winter. And again, it provides a different level of professional community because they're all coaching. And even though they're in 3 different districts, one is in Seattle Public Schools, one is in Kent, and one is in an independent school, they actually find so many commonalities that they are learning from one another and are able to help and support one another in really valuable ways. And so it really speaks to the potential of this practice-based doctorate that we're developing, and also of the importance of professional communities, because so often those teacher coaches, they're excellent teachers, but they're not supported in learning how to coach. So they just kind of figure it out as they go along. And what our program is looking to do is really offer them professional community and then offer them really intentional support around what it means to do teacher mentoring that is different than what it means to teach students, even though there are things in common.
I should also say that our coaches at the preparatory level also, in terms of teacher prep, also receive some professional development as coaches based on the equity models of Elena Aguilar, as well as other researchers. That's conducted by one of our alums here.
I think
so it's very purposeful.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions?
Can I jump in here?
Sure, go ahead, Mia.
So let me start by just saying thank you. It's so inspiring to hear you all talk about the work and our students and why you do what you do. So thank you. Let me start with that piece. I'm going to bring it actually back to some kind of foundational basic questions that I think we all know the answers, but it's important to say it. And we have 3 superintendents with us today, Superintendents Pedroza, Jones, and Green. And if anything, my question is kind of directed to them. These 2 core questions. Why? Why does it matter to diversify the educator workforce? And then why is it important to, quote, Dr. Beam Conroy's point, to prepare teachers who look like and sound like our students? Why is it important? And I'd love to hear from some of our district leaders. Like, how would you answer those questions? Why does it matter? And then, why is it important to prepare teachers who look and sound like our students?
I can jump in first. So I identify as Native American, and I can take you through my entire public school career, not having had one teacher that represented any tribal nation, and it would have made the difference, a world of difference in my life. And I think it would have made a difference in the lives of many of my colleagues or peers that grew up on the reservation. But your question is one of why and what's the benefit. We know that when students see themselves in their teachers and their mentors, that's an aspirational impact of what they see themselves as far as what they can become. And it shows them what is possible. We also know that there's research that shows that teachers who are representative of their students raise the bar and raise expectations for those students. So students are able to learn more from teachers who look like them. And that's not a knock on the predominantly white female perspective of educators in our country. It's, people can do the best and learn all of the techniques and everything that they can do to make an impact. But there are some intangibles that do impact students of color. And I can think of, when I was in the Highline School District, having one of my colleagues who actually worked for me in the recruitment department, Thaisa Bradford. She could walk into any school and you could just see the little black girl's eyes light up when they saw her walk into the facility, something that I could never do because I didn't represent who they were. And just the impact that she had without them even knowing in her position, but knowing that she worked for the district. And then the conversations that ensued from that moment on really hammered home the impact of raising that level of recruitment across our entire system. Again, when I was in Highline and now in Yakima School District.
Thanks, Trevor.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with Trevor, but I'm gonna let Dr. Pedrosa clean this up. I'll just say that I think it's just good practice. It elevates practice to have diverse viewpoints, diverse racial experiences, diverse cultural experiences. And we know that homogeneous groups aren't as effective as heterogeneous groups. And so the fact that we have that, like I as a student coming up had 4 Black teachers coming up, I thought I could do anything. I thought I could. I didn't know I was gifted, but I was gifted, and I just thought that high performance, high expectations was the norm. And so I felt that because of the ability to see teachers that look like me. And but I just think this is so important to just think about. I think it raises quality of practice, and the fact that there's diverse perspectives, it just enhances the field. But I'll defer to Dr. Pedrosa because she's gonna clean this up.
Well, I was just gonna add that in terms of inclusion, when you think about kids with disabilities, our MLL students, I think about thinking about not just about culture and race, but also about even what are we doing in terms of making sure that we're hiring staff that actually can relate to students. When we talk about relationships and belonging, those are critical pieces. And so making sure that students actually see themselves in all types of people, right? Because they have so many identities. So having that diverse perspective. And then it goes back to what Dr. Jones said, right? Like in terms of there's that research piece about all of it, but there's also research that says if one teacher, right, in elementary guarantees success in middle school. One teacher in middle school, right, on and on, at least one. Can you imagine what happens if we do more than that and make sure that every grade level, every level, that students can look at all of the diversity of their teachers and find someone that they can connect with. So there's just so many benefits for so many people, and seeing different languages, accents, all of that actually will help the students actually learn to what does it actually mean to be collaborative and community and to think about culture. And so everything that they said, and then just adding a little piece extra.
Thank you so much to the three of you for your leadership and what you just said. I mean, I keep thinking about so much of what we hear these days is just about student achievement, right? But if a kid doesn't feel connected to the school, a sense of belonging and having relationships, the achievement part is just a lofty dream, right? And I think what we're all talking about is that for some kids, having a teacher who looks like them or sounds like them is the thing that they need in order to feel like, school makes sense for me. School's a place where I belong. School's a place where I want to achieve, etc. Right? And so I think that piece is just what people talking so much about achievement, they're forgetting that a core piece of achievement is belonging. And belonging hinges on feeling connected to people, right? And then I also think about race relations. White students need to have teachers of color for their own good well-being in the future. Otherwise, it's going to just continue to reconstruct or reproduce this notion, this stratified society that we live in, where there's assumptions that certain people are here and certain people are here and certain people are here. So I wanted to throw that in, but thank you.
I just wanted to kind of jump in and bring it back to the do and the diversifying the educator workforce just a little bit, because what you said, Dr. Green, and echo Dr. Jones and Dr. Pedrosa, was a lot of what we see in our students' applications and we hear from them in their interviews when they come to our program is they want to be the teacher that they did not have when they were in school. Absolutely. They want to be that person who they missed, that they didn't have, that they really want to fulfill that role for other students.
No, Erin
Yeah.
had her hand up.
Yep. Hi, Erin.
And I was just gonna Mia's point just really quickly. Sorry, Erin. I promise I'm almost done. But what she said about white students needing teachers of color, there's actually research on that actually all students benefit from having diverse teachers, not just students of color. So yes, the reflective component is really important, but it's important for all students that they have diverse teachers and that they encounter folks that also don't look like them that are their teachers. Sorry, Erin, go ahead.
No, I'm just adding another pile on. I run the state's complaint line for public education. So yeah, questionable career choices. But I would say about, a good percentage of the calls that we get are because there's a communication, something broke down in the communication. And often it's because, and a lot of times it could be because language barriers, cultural barriers, or the family doesn't feel trusted and safe by the school staff, whether that's real, perceived, or something else. So having diverse staff, and especially ones from different cultural backgrounds, can often maybe avoid a conflict blowing up to the point where a student is out of school or help to work through it a lot quicker. I can think of a couple cases where it was a Native American family and the family just didn't feel like they could trust the school staff because they didn't see themselves culturally reflected. And by the time the case reaches us, it takes a lot more to work through than if we have staff that can really work with a family up front and say, we see you, we hear you, we can understand your cultural practices or your language barriers, or even just how you move through the world. So thank you for your work, and I hope that I get less calls.
We'll do our best.
Thank you.
Any more questions for our team? Well, let me say thank you to the three of you because I think you're doing an outstanding job. I reminisce about being a middle school principal in here in Washington State, and all the kids who followed me around the hallway at lunchtime trying to get on my good side. Just because this is the place where you can get in trouble and be okay about it and then move on to high school and be a better person. But it made a big difference. I could see it in the eyes of the kids and in the impact that it had on them when, people perceived them as being more difficult when they just really needed someone to connect with, to bring out who they were and who they could potentially be. So we really appreciate the work that you're doing. It's going to make a difference, a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So let me turn this over to Jessica. Jessica is going to update us on the work that she's been doing. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Mia stole the thunder. No, I'm kidding. We do have some good news. There are times where I'm reflecting on how lucky I am to be in the work that I get to do alongside our partners. And right now, especially, is one of those times. There are a lot of places that feel discouraging, but this is a time where philanthropy is so critical, more critical than ever before, and where we really have some solutions that we can offer in a way that is now more important than than it was even 2 months ago. So I just appreciate everyone who is on our board and partnering with us to continue to advance our work, and helping us lean into that philanthropic and generous community that we have in this area. I really do want to lift up the work of Diversify the Educator workforce. This If you haven't heard me say it before, I try to say in every meeting, this is one of the most, if not the most important initiative of the College of Education. If everything else was gone, we would still need teachers, and we would still need to educate teachers, and we need teachers who are empathetic and who can connect with students and who can go out into the workforce and contribute to a thriving community and society. So it's the bread and butter of what we do. And I hope that you all get a chance to know this team that just presented. I have never met more hardworking, passionate, dedicated people in my life. They are truly, they work around the clock because they care about kids, they care about the adults who are investing in kids, and they are working so hard each and every day, and they don't stop fighting and they don't give up. So our job is to rally around them and to, especially right now, because it's even more demanding, it's even harder to stay the course. Um, we gotta we gotta rally and back them up. And what does that look like? Well, yeah, we need funding. The Do um, initiative was made possible through philanthropic dollars. The reason we have a position like Gwen is because we fundraised for it, and she's only part-time, and she works a lot more than how we would ever expect a part-time employee to work. But she is on the phone with candidates, with graduates. Um, she is helping both students who are in the program and who are in the workforce and are teaching stay committed to the work and persist. And we also need to make sure that we're supporting our diverse candidates through those scholarships and the fellowships. So what we're really looking for right now are people who can champion this specific initiative, who can kind of double down and say, you know what, I want to put my weight behind this initiative. I want to be a champion for it. I want to help you guys think through what can we do to elevate it and bring in more funding opportunities so that what we started with our initial investment, we can keep growing and continue. So if that is something that you're interested in, that's what we want to hear. If you have ideas, we want to hear that. And be able to talk about the work too. So that's why you're our amazing ambassador board members, is you know how to be our kind of trusted messengers out there and share the work that we're doing so that more people want to learn about it and lean in and talk to us and help us think through solutions. So that's our ask for you today. Let us know if you want to champion this effort and we can talk to you about it. If you have somebody else in the community that you think would be a good person to help us think through how to get more funding for this effort, let us know. And if you're not sure, but just want to lean in a little bit more and have a conversation with us, reach out, and we are always happy to meet. That's all. That's what I have for today. We're very excited for Edu Talks, and we'll have some more topics around, diversifying the teacher workforce, and the theme around creativity is going to make it a lot of fun. So I hope you all can join. And thanks to everyone who's here, who's already been supportive of this effort. People have looked at case studies. I'm looking at you, Telka. People have given us feedback. People have invested financially. Again, we wouldn't even be having this conversation without our partners and our community and our supporters. So just thanks for everything you've done up until today.
Great. Thanks, Jessica. I echo Jessica's words. We wouldn't be where we are without so many of you who've been so helpful to us to move forward. So we're going to wrap up our meeting now. Hopefully you've learned a significant amount about DEW, and you can carry that message to anyone in your own network. Make them aware of the kinds of things that we're trying to do. And again, if you have questions for us, don't hesitate to send those to Nelson, things that we can look at, or something that maybe you didn't get an answer to, let us know. Because having you have more information gives us an opportunity to get to a broader network and a broader community to support what we're doing. Again, thank you all. Thank you, Mia, and all the team at the College of Ed. And we're done for today, but we'll stay on for a few minutes just in case you have some questions you want to ask. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. Take care of yourselves.